Previously on the Vetflicks.
Heaven there is no beer, that's why we drink it here. And when we are gone from here, our friends will be drinking our beer. In heaven there is no beer, that's why we drink it here. And when we are gone from here, our friends will be drinking our beer. Guy, anyway.
Lonely kisses passing by the river.
Hi guys, how you doing? How you feeling today? Welcome back to the channel. As I had left you, I had told you that I'll teach you how to make beer, and already we are entering in a brewery, and I am ready to teach you how to make beers in 4 simple steps. Are you ready? Drum roll. So guys, according to Germany purity law, or the law that governs the manufacture of beers, beers can only be made out of 4 products. For you to call your product a beer, you need barley. This is the barley that I'm talking about. You need hops. These are the hops that I'm talking about. This is processed or dried hops, and then this is yeast that you need for the beer. So what do you do with the 4 products that I have shown you to make beers? So first, take your barley. Barley is the first product that you'll use. Soak it in water for it to open up or to germinate, and then that will create what we call a malt, and then you take that malt and dry it, and that is very important because it has an enzyme that naturally is used for brewing in beers. So you guys have seen like some beers are like light beer with light yellow colors, and then we have some dark beers with dark colors. This malting process is also an important step when it comes to beer manufacturing, with the length and the temperature that you'll use to dry the malt determining the color and also the flavor. There are sweet beers and also there are some chocolatey, how bitter beers. Step is for you to take your malt. So the malt is dried, yeah, so you'll take it and soak it again in warm water. So that what that will do is the starch in barley will convert into fermentable sugar, creating a very sweet liquid known as wort. There's a game of taste, flavor, aroma, and also the color when it comes to beer manufacturing, and this next step is such an important step when it comes to flavoring, aroma, and also how bitter or how sweet a beer will be at the end of the manufacturing. So what do you do in the next step with the wort that you had collected? So guys, you remember the hops that I had shown you? So this is what will give our wort, this liquid, the flavor, the aroma, and also the taste. Do you want it bitter or sweet? So how do you play around the hops to give all of this? Guys, we have our wort, that liquid, and we have our hops, that thing, and we want to add the hops to the wort so that we achieve different results depending on the preferences or your objective. So do you want your beer to be bitter? The hops have some acid and have some oils that play around this flavor and the aroma and also the taste of the beer. So if you want your beer to be bitter, you put your hops at the beginning of the boiling. The boiling takes 1 hour. So if you want to have a bitter beer, you add the hops at the beginning of the of the boiling, so that before the 1 hour ends, the hops will have extracted some acid from it, and it gives the beer some bitterness, and it balances the sweetness of the wort. See, we said the worts are starch that have been converted into fermentable sugars. So these hops will add some bitterness and balance out the sweetness of the wort, and this will bring the beer to some bitterness, sweetness, flavor. So do you want to give your beer some flavor? So what you do with the hops, instead of putting them at the beginning of the boiling, you put them mid-boiling. So we said boiling is 1 hour. We boil the wort for 1 hour. So if you want bitterness, you put the hops at the beginning of the boiling. If you want flavor, you put them at the mid-boiling. So what it does, the hops will extract some oil from the hops, and that will give it really, really good flavor. So class, what's the last thing that we're left to do with our beer? The people at the back?
The pressure increase or decrease? Come again.
Increases.
Yeah?
Increases.
Okay, thank you. Good. So we are now left with putting aroma to our beer. So what do you do with these hops to put aroma to the beer? You add them at almost the end of the boiling. So instead of the beginning or the end or the middle, we put them at the end. That is 0 to 15 minutes to the boiling time. So where do we get the aroma? From the hops. It's because we're putting them at the end of the boiling, we have preserved all the volatile oils that are responsible for the aroma of the beer. Actually, some of them let the wort boil and cool down before adding the hops. This gives the beer the complicity and the aroma that will differentiate it from any other beer that the hops have been put while it is boiling. So after doing all that and you have made your beer according to your preference, what you do next is cooling the wort, and whatever goes next is the yeast, and the yeast is what is responsible for the fermentation process. Also, fermentation process depends on the type of beer you want to make. There is top fermentation and bottom fermentation depending on the type of beer you want to make. So what's the difference between the top fermentation and bottom fermentation? So the difference, first of all, the type of yeast that you'll use for the two fermentations are different. There's a certain yeast that you'll use for top fermentation and a different one that you'll use for bottom fermentation. The second parameter is for top fermentation you use warmer temperatures, and for the bottom fermentation you use cooler temperature. So for the top fermentation, because of the warm temperature, the yeast will rise above the beer, producing carbon dioxide and alcohol, and what it does, it produces more diverse flavors of beer, and also most of the alloys are made from this top fermentation. For the bottom fermentation, we use a different kind of yeast, and this yeast goes to the bottom of the fermenter, and it also uses cooler temperatures compared to the top fermentation where it uses warm temperature. So this one uses cooler temperatures. It sinks at the bottom of the fermenter, and what it does, it produces more clearer beers, and also most of the lagers, example Tusker lager, are made from this bottom fermentation method. Okay, class? And from there, friends, we have our beer ready for any other processes depending on the beer company, depending on whatever you want to achieve, and so on and so forth. So example, just to summarize, some of the beers will undergo maturation just to give it flavor and to clear all the impurities that it might have carried during the processes. Some of them undergo filtration for clearer and a smoother beer feeling, and also some of them undergo carbonization, where it gives it a longer shelf life compared to to the ones that have not been carbonized, and so on and so forth. And of course, you need to package your beers. So for the beers, it can come in form of the bottles, it can come in form of the cans, and it can come in form of the kegs. So there you have it, class. That is how you have either your malt, Tusker Lager, Tusker Cider. And if you didn't know how, now you know it. You're welcome.
There is no